Hello. Hijikishani hini karagawina hinuk mahe ke ide nuka igarina. Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Dr. Angel Hinzo. I'm Ho-Chunk, Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska. And I'm also, from my paternal side, Mexican. I identify as Mexican American. And when I was asked to be one of the speakers for, also I just realized I forgot to set time, but I'll try to keep in time. But when I was asked to be a speaker, I definitely said yes, because any opportunity to really speak to like the gifts that were given to me through participating in the McNair program years ago, and how much it has impacted me, I'm excited and happy to do that. And definitely, so thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this, ability to be able to talk with you a little bit about my experience and to be able to celebrate the more than 150 UCSD McNair alumni receiving their PhD. Like, that's amazing. And when I think about the McNair program, it was instrumental in my journey to receiving my PhD and in supporting my higher education journey. And just kind of like reflecting as I was sitting here reflecting with the folks at my table, the years at UCSD and a lot of the programming that I was involved with during my time here, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, both in my career and just when looking at my emotional development and my development as an adult, without these programs and these support systems that were in place. Because in reality, when I think about how I did travel on my academic trajectory, it was through the support of faculty, staff, a lot of the programs here at UCSD that were put into place, and even in high school, when I think about the teachers in my high school who encouraged me to apply to university, like, because as a first generation person in my family interested in academics and of the ability to pursue a bachelor's degree, if it really wasn't for people saying you can do this and modeling that, and actually taking me aside and saying, you have the skill set to be able to have this be a career and to actually validate like what I was writing, because I was just interested. So that's how I always, so it's kind of funny to me when thinking about it, like in retrospect, because I like reading. Like I was like, well, I'm someone who likes reading. I like writing, I like learning, I like sharing what I read and what I write with my family, with my friends, with anyone. And also I liked teaching. Like in high school, I would tutor, and like throughout my time as a student here, I tutored too, like just friends and talking about our work and studying together and everything. And I didn't know that those are skills, like if it wasn't for people pulling me aside and saying, these are skills that you can use in research, that these are skills you can use for a career, I would not have known, because those are just things I like to do, And so I really appreciate everyone who throughout like my development as a student and as a scholar and academic, whoever took me aside and said that what I was doing was special and was worth pursuing and validating that. Because a lot of, being someone like first generation college student, and I think just the differences in like a lot of times, like even now I'll talk about, even though I'm like a professor or faculty member at USD, when I talk to my family members about like what my job is and what daily is, they know I'm a teacher, and that's something very tangible to them. I talk to them about like my research. I do history, I do tribal history, federal policy, Native studies, following US governance and policy. And those were all part of my project I did in McNair. Like I had the beginnings and the seeds of being interested in those topics and those ideas. And I can talk to my family about those aspects, but I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between their understanding of how, you know, like their understanding of there's other people who are interested in that and you actually can make a career off of talking about these things. Like, I think there is a little bit of a, like, they're like, okay, you know, when I tell them, when they ask me, like, what do you do at conferences and what are you presenting on? And I'll tell them, and I think they're like, and people show up and listen, you know, like, and I'm like, yeah, they did, you know, like, I was like, yeah, people want to know because these are policies, because they see the lived reality, you know, they, like, people see the lived reality of historical policies and governance and those impacts. But to actually think that there are like thinkers involved in pointing out the critiques and criticisms and why it's important to look at ethnic studies, why it's important to look at the social sciences and how it impacts like policymaking today, and like that conversation, I think that's like what I share is like there are people who are talking about the importance of this like these historical events and how they continue to impact like the world around us today. And people are still living with the impacts of policy and governmental relations. And so really my interest in the field that I'm in was developed through the McNair program. I was a history major. And the thing that is funny though is, and I was in here at UCSB, I was involved with the history honors program. And when I applied to the McNair program, like through the history honors program, it was very focused on US history and not as much focused on, I didn't realize what I wanted to do at the time is Native studies. It's Native studies, it's Indigenous studies. And when the McNair program allowed me to actually start investigating what Native studies is. And that's something that, although I was a history major in history honors, I hadn't really, it didn't, that at the time, that program didn't kind of have the space to kind of do what I had wanted to do. The McNair program did. So in being able to find a mentor, and my mentor was actually Dr. Ross Frank, who is still in the ethnic studies department here at UCSD. And I remember, and so already it kind of started like having him as my mentor through the McNair program started my interest in interdisciplinarity, you know, and those aspects of Native studies. Because the thing that's funny is during my entire time in the history program, I never took an ethnic studies course. Like I came in very interested in history, very interested in the archive. And I was actually just a couple classes away from being a European historian track because I was really interested in the French Revolution. And so I was like just like 2 classes short of actually being that focused. But you know, I was also wanting to bridge the fact that the history of my family, the history that I was taught in my household remained invisible in pretty much most of my education. And so now, like in knowing that part of my career is actually being able to teach this history that I knew in my household, that I have relatives who have the lived realities of, and being able to share that with other people. Like the beginnings of that started through my project in the McNair program. And with working with Dr. Ross Frank, he validated my work and encouraged me to pursue graduate school and PhD programs. At the time, I was actually debating on going into social work. And which is still, I sometimes still like think, I have a lot of social people who work in the field, and it's one of those things that you know, that I am very much still interested in and supporting, because to me that's very more concrete. But when working with Professor Frank and of looking at what like research in the social sciences looks like, what historical research and ethnography looks like, the work on practicing that skill set and actually doing that research really grounded me in pursuing a PhD and going into a PhD track. And also really giving me the skills. Like I presented at my first conference symposium when I was in McNair. And so giving me that skill set helped me go through my PhD program. And people in my cohort when I was in my PhD program already had their master's degrees. And I felt behind because I was keeping up with these. I was like, oh man, they already have their master's. I just have a bachelor's, but it's a bachelor's from UCSD, and I was like telling myself, but there was a difference in skill set and maturity. And but my time in McNair actually gave me a lot of the skills in being able to present and being able to write, and my work with Dr. Frank enabled me to get through that graduate program. And in addition to working with my colleagues, my peers who are also in that program. And so it really, everything that I developed while in McNair enabled me to keep up. And I realize that now because, I was a low income, I was pretty much checked all the boxes, low income, first generation, underrepresented student. I was involved in the Native American and Indigenous Student Association here. And actually, at the time when I was at UCSD, there was no Native Student Center at the time I was there. There also, the group, the org had been on hiatus too. And I was actually part of restarting it. Me and Shaylin, Zaystro, and Brittany, who I still keep in touch with, like we helped in kind of restarting that here. And so, I take pride in being a McNair alum, in being a UCSD alum, in being a Native Indigenous person who is an alum of this institution. And I do recognize a lot of the support that it gave me. And it was support that through my background, I didn't have access to, through no fault of my family. It's just part of again, those lived realities that are there. And I've also been able to share a lot of this experience with my family. My mom came to my McNair presentation, at the symposium. She came to everything I invited, her to, and my sister too. And so, not only is this program a space to uplift students, but it opens up the space for us to be able to include our family members. I remember Dr. Frank meeting my mom and everything. And so I really appreciate that aspect of the space that's here. So having had the opportunity to benefit from the McNair program, I strive to be a faculty mentor to support the students that I work with. So that's the other thing is through the McNair program, I was modeled a lot of the things, I knew what worked for me. And I really hope that I can, as I kind of continue in my career track, that I can help to pass that forward. And I want to echo the words that were said before, that if anybody ever wants, I'm local in the area. I work at University of San Diego. If anybody ever wants to reach out to me and talk about graduate school, or as you continue on your journey, feel free to, I'm around, feel free to reach out to me. And because I like talking about, and anything I could do to help, definitely, I'm available. So I think I'll end there. And again, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about my time in the McNair program and the inspiration, I hope, that it gave me throughout my time, and the meaning behind it. Well, actually, really quick, when I told my mom that I was invited to speak, she got really excited. I told her yesterday and she was like, that's awesome. Does Dr. Ross Frank know? And I was like, oh, I'll email him and tell him. but like, you know, in my family, at least, like I can't speak for, but like in my family, like they know that how much like McNair like meant to me on my educational journey. And so yeah, I really appreciate that. And again, yeah, feel free to reach out for anyone who yeah, ever wants to talk, or if there's anything I can help with. But thank you.